The dog didn't bark at the stranger. He guarded the floor, or like something underneath was still alive. Metal slammed under Ethan's boots as he spun toward the rear doors, Milo already between him and the dark. The engine ticked, cooling, but something inside the ambulance answered. Faint, hollow, wrong. Ethan's hand tightened, breath low, eyes scanning shadows that didn't move, until one of them did. What do you think is hiding in that ambulance? The door shut with a hollow thud behind him. Ethan Cole didn't turn around. He stood on the gravel driveway for a second longer than he needed to, eyes fixed on the warped wood of the cabin door, as if it might open again. It didn't. The wind moved across the Montana hillside instead, pushing through dry grass and rattling the loose tin nailed to the shed. Behind him, tires crunched. His brother's truck rolled past without slowing, the bed already loaded with things that used to belong to their father. Tools, a generator, the good stuff. Ethan watched the dust trail stretch down the dirt road until it disappeared behind the ridge. Then it was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that presses in on your ears. Milo shifted beside him. The German shepherd stood close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth of him through the cold air. Ears up. Still, watching everything. Not the house, not the road, the field. Ethan followed his line of sight. That's where it sat. The ambulance. Faded white-red stripe peeling down the side, rust eating through the wheel wells. It leaned slightly into the earth like it had given up trying to stand straight years ago. The rear doors were shut, one hinge crooked. That it? Ethan muttered. He already knew the answer. Keys had been dropped into his hand 10 minutes ago. No eye contact, no explanation. He walked toward it, boots crunching gravel, then soft dirt. The wind shifted again, carrying the faint smell of old oil and something sterile underneath it, like a hospital that had been closed too long. Milo didn't follow right away. He stayed behind for a beat, watching the house. Then he moved. Quiet. Controlled. Falling in just off Ethan's left side where he always walked. They reached the ambulance. Ethan ran a hand along the side panel. Cold metal. Rough where the paint had peeled. His fingers caught on a seam that shouldn't have been there, then moved past it without stopping. He circled once. Slow. Checking. Habit. Mirrors. Undercarriage. Tires half flat but holding. No footprints around it except his own and Milo's. No fresh tracks. No broken grass. Clear. He opened the driver's door. It creaked, louder than it should have. Ethan froze for half a second, listening. Nothing answered. He climbed in. The seat sagged under his weight. The dashboard was cracked, sun-bleached. A faint smell lingered inside. Antiseptic, rubber, and something older. Something that didn't belong to any one thing. He stared at the steering wheel. His hands rested on it without thinking. For a second, just a second, his grip tightened. Leather gloves. Sand. Radio chatter bleeding through static. Ethan blinked. The cab was empty again. He let go. Yeah, he said under his breath. Just a truck. Milo jumped up into the passenger side without being told. He didn't sit. He stood on the seat, nose angled toward the rear of the ambulance, body rigid. Ethan noticed. Hey. No response. Milo didn't even look at him. His ears twitched once. Listening. Ethan followed his gaze to the narrow window separating the cab from the back. Dark. Nothing moving. He turned the key. The engine didn't start. Just a dry click. Again. Another click. Figures. He leaned back, exhaled through his nose and shut it off. Not worth the fight. Not tonight. The sun was already dropping behind the ridge, dragging the temperature with it. No reason to stay exposed. He climbed out, grabbed his duffel from his pickup, and parked himself in the cab of his own truck a few yards away. Milo didn't come. Ethan looked up. The dog was still in the ambulance, standing, watching. "Suit yourself," Ethan muttered. He didn't call him again. Night came fast. Cold slipped in through the seams of the truck, settling into the metal. Ethan wrapped his jacket tighter and leaned his head back against the seat. He closed his eyes. For a while, nothing happened. Then, clank. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He didn't move. Breathing slowed automatically, controlled, shallow. Listening. Wind. Grass. Nothing else. He waited. 30 seconds. Maybe more. He shifted slightly, just enough to see the ambulance through the windshield. Still. Dark. Milo's silhouette visible in the front seat. Not lying down. Not sleeping. Watching. Another sound. Clank. From inside. Ethan's jaw tightened. He reached under the seat, fingers brushing the cold metal of the wrench he kept there. Not a weapon. Not officially. Good enough. He didn't get out. Not yet. He watched. Milo's head tilted slightly, ears forward, body stiff as a line drawn in ink. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, just stared, like he was waiting for something to move, or something to come back. Ethan sat there in the dark, eyes locked on the ambulance, counting breaths the way he used to in places where counting mattered. Nothing moved. Nothing came out. But the feeling didn't go away. It stayed there. Quiet. Wrong. And somewhere between the second and third hour of the night, with the wind pressing against the truck and the metal ticking as it cooled, Ethan realized something he didn't like. Milo hadn't looked away once, not even for a second. And whatever had made that sound was still inside. The cold never really left that night. It settled into the metal of the truck, into Ethan's bones, into the quiet space between each breath. He didn't remember falling asleep. Just the moment before. Eyes on the ambulance, and the moment after. Gray light. Morning. Ethan blinked, slow, his neck stiff, his hand still curled loosely around the wrench. He didn't stretch, didn't yawn. His eyes went straight to the field. The ambulance hadn't moved. Milo was still inside. Same position, same posture. Sitting upright in the passenger seat, body angled toward the rear compartment like a sentry that hadn't been relieved. Ethan exhaled once through his nose. Yeah, that's not normal. He opened the truck door. Cold air hit him sharp and clean. The kind that wakes you up whether you want it or not. Gravel crunched under his boots as he walked toward the ambulance. Milo didn't turn. Not when Ethan got closer. Not when he opened the driver's door again. Hey. Nothing. The dog's ears flicked once, but his eyes stayed locked on the narrow window behind the seats. Ethan climbed in halfway, resting one knee on the edge of the seat. He followed Milo's line of sight. Dark back there. Same as last night. No movement. No sound. But the feeling, he felt it again. Like stepping into a room where something had just happened. Ethan reached over and gave Milo a light push on the shoulder. All right. You made your point. Milo didn't budge. His muscles were tight. Not scared. Focused. Ethan pulled his hand back. Something about that, about the way Milo held position, triggered a memory he didn't ask for. Forward position. Hold. Watch the door. Different place, different smell. Sand and diesel instead of pine and rust. Ethan shut it down. He climbed the rest of the way in. Let's see what's got you worked up. He moved slow. Not cautious in the civilian sense. Not hesitant. Controlled. He reached for the latch that led into the rear compartment. Paused. Listened. Nothing. He pulled it open. The back of the ambulance was exactly what it had looked like through the window. Narrow bench, cabinets along the wall, empty hooks where equipment used to hang. Dust in the corners, but not as much as there should have been. Ethan stepped inside. The metal floor gave a dull, hollow echo under his weight. Clang. He stopped. That sound again. Not from the door. Not from outside. Underneath. His eyes dropped. The floor. He took another step. Slower. Clang. Same spot. Ethan's jaw tightened. Milo was beside him now. Silent. Nose low. Hovering just above the surface. Ethan crouched. Ran his fingers along the metal. Cold. Smooth in some places. Rough in others. Then he found it. A seam. Faint. Almost invisible unless you were looking for it. He traced it with his thumb. Square shape. Maybe 2 feet across. Set into the floor just behind where a stretcher would have locked in. That's not factory, he muttered. Milo let out a low sound. Not quite a growl. More like confirmation. Ethan leaned back slightly, eyes scanning the rest of the compartment. No obvious handle. No latch in plain sight. Whoever built it didn't want it found. Ethan shifted position, angling himself to get a better look along the edge. He pressed down. Nothing. Ran his fingers along the side. Nothing. He sat back on his heels, breathing steady, thinking. Then Milo moved, 1 step forward. He nudged the side panel with his nose, harder than before. A soft click answered. Ethan froze. They both looked at the same spot. A small section near the wall had shifted, just enough to break the line. Ethan reached for it, hesitated for half a second, then pressed. The latch gave. A quiet metallic snap. Ethan didn't move right away. He just stared at it. At the edge of something that wasn't supposed to be there. Behind him, the wind picked up, brushing against the outside of the ambulance like a warning. Milo stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could feel him there without looking. Waiting, Ethan wrapped his fingers around the edge of the panel. Cold metal bit into his skin. He pulled. It didn't open all the way. Not yet. But it lifted just enough to show darkness underneath. Not empty darkness. Deep. Sealed. And whatever was inside had been there a long time. Ethan let the panel settle back down. Slow. Careful. He stood up, looked at Milo. The dog held his gaze this time. Not tense, not confused. Certain. Ethan glanced back at the floor, then toward the open field, then back at the ambulance. All right, he said quietly. Not to Milo. Not really. To himself. Because whatever this was, it wasn't scrap metal anymore, and whatever had made that noise last night hadn't been the wind. Ethan stood there a long time after saying it. The panel lay flush again with the floor, like it had never moved, like the seam had only been a trick of light and tired eyes. But the echo of that click still hung in the air, sharp and real. Milo didn't move. He stayed planted beside the spot, head low, eyes fixed, waiting. Ethan rubbed a hand across his jaw, slow. "All right," he said under his breath. "One more time." He crouched again. This time he didn't rush. His fingers moved methodically across the metal, tracing every edge, every line. He shifted his weight, adjusted his angle, looking at it the way he used to look at anything that didn't feel right in a convoy. Something off, something hidden just beneath the surface. Find the irregularity. Don't assume. He pressed down along the seam again. Nothing. He moved to the side panel where Milo had nudged before, ran his fingers along it. There. A slight give. He pressed. Click. Same sound. Cleaner this time. Ethan didn't hesitate. He hooked his fingers under the edge of the floor panel and pulled. It lifted. Slow at first, resisting like something that hadn't been opened in years. Then the seal broke with a dry crack, and the panel rose on hidden hinges. Cold air drifted up from below, not fresh air, still air, sealed air. Ethan leaned back slightly, instinct taking over. He didn't stick his head down, didn't reach in blindly. He waited, counted. 1, 2, 3. Nothing moved, no shifting, no sound. He angled his body and looked down into the compartment. Steel walls, clean, too clean, no rust, no dust. Whoever built it had done it right, sealed tight against everything outside. Inside, objects were arranged in tight rows, not tossed, placed, deliberate. Ethan reached in. Careful. His hand closed around the first thing he touched, a leather-bound notebook, worn at the edges but intact. He pulled it out and set it on the bench beside him. Another, same size, same wear. Then a folded map, thick paper, creased along hard lines. A small metal case. Medical by the look of it. Everything fit snug. Nothing rattled. Ethan paused. His eyes settled on the bottom of the compartment. One more item. An envelope. White. Aged just enough to yellow at the corners. His name written across the front. Not printed. Handwritten. Ethan. He stared at it. His throat tightened slightly, but he didn't move for a second. Milo shifted closer. Not pushing. Just there. Ethan reached down and picked up the envelope. It felt light. Too light for something that had been hidden this carefully. He turned it over. Sealed. No stamp. No date. Just his name. He ran his thumb along the edge of the paper, feeling the slight roughness where it had been handled. Then he set it aside. Not yet. He went back to the notebooks, opened the first one. The pages were filled. Tight handwriting. Clean. Structured. Dates along the margins. Locations. Short notes. Ethan scanned the first page. March 12th. Creek Road, North Ridge. Male, mid-50s. Severe infection. Untreated. Cleaned. Dressed. Antibiotics left. He flipped a page. March 19th. Same location. Infection improving. Supplies low. Return next week. Another page. April 2nd. Overpass camp. 2 new cases. 1 child. Respiratory distress. Ethan stopped. Looked closer. The handwriting. He knew it. Even after all these years. His father's. He exhaled slowly. What were you doing out here? Milo's ears twitched at his voice. Ethan flipped more pages. Every entry the same pattern. Date, place, condition, action, precise, controlled. Like a report. Not a diary. He grabbed the map next, unfolded it across his knee. Montana. This region. But marked. Lines drawn in pen, circles, coordinates scribbled in the margins, places no one went unless they had a reason. Old mining routes, logging roads, dead-end trails that didn't show up on standard maps. Ethan's eyes moved across it, piecing it together. Routes, patterns, supply runs. He didn't say it out loud, didn't need to. He knew what this looked like. Not random, not scattered, planned. He glanced back at the compartment. Everything still in place, untouched for years. Except his eyes narrowed slightly. One corner of the metal case, a faint scuff, recent, not rust, not age. Something had brushed it. Recently. Ethan went still, every muscle tightening without movement. Milo sensed it immediately. The dog's posture shifted, weight forward, head turning slightly toward the rear doors, listening. Ethan didn't look up right away. He closed the notebook, folded the map back along its creases, placed both beside the envelope. Then he reached down and pulled the floor panel closed, soft, controlled. The latch clicked back into place, sealed again, like it had never been opened. Only then did he turn. Slow, toward the rear doors. Nothing there, just light bleeding through the seams. But the feeling, it was back, same as last night. Ethan stood, moved forward a step. Milo was already ahead of him, body low, silent, watching the doors like something on the other side might move at any second. Ethan stopped just short of reaching for the handle. He listened. Wind, distant, grass moving. Then footsteps, faint, not close but not far enough. Ethan's grip tightened slightly. He didn't open the door. Not yet. Behind him, on the bench, the envelope with his name on it sat in the quiet. Waiting. And for the first time since stepping into that ambulance, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He wasn't the first one to find it. Ethan didn't open the rear doors. Not right away. He stayed where he was, one hand hovering near the handle, the other relaxed at his side, but not really relaxed. His weight shifted just slightly, enough to give him leverage if something moved fast. Milo stood angled to the left, covering a blind spot Ethan couldn't see without turning. The footsteps didn't come closer. They stopped, somewhere out beyond the ambulance, just out of sight. Ethan counted in his head. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. No voice, no movement. Just the wind dragging through the dry grass again, like it was trying to erase whatever had been there. Ethan stepped back. Slow. He didn't throw the doors open. Didn't announce himself. Instead, he moved to the side of the vehicle, circling it the same way he had the day before, but tighter this time. More deliberate. No tracks. No broken stems. If someone had been there, they knew how to move. That thought settled heavy. Ethan stopped at the driver's side again and climbed in without a word. Milo followed immediately this time. No hesitation. Ethan shut the door, then reached back and locked it manually. Same with the passenger side. A pointless gesture, maybe. But it gave structure. Control. He looked at the rearview mirror. Nothing behind him but the narrow window into the back. The same dark space. The same place the sound had come from. Ethan reached back, grabbed the envelope, and pulled it into the front with him. It sat in his hands for a moment. Light. Too light for what it meant. He turned it over again, like he had before. Same worn edge. Same handwriting. His father's. Ethan slid a finger under the seal and tore it open. The paper inside was folded once. He unfolded it slowly. The writing was steady, not rushed, not desperate. Just clear. Ethan, if you're reading this, then you found it. That means you stayed longer than most would. A corner of Ethan's mouth twitched. He kept reading. I didn't tell you about any of this because I knew what you'd say. You'd call it a liability. You'd call it unnecessary risk. You wouldn't be wrong. But I also knew you'd understand it eventually. Ethan shifted slightly in the seat. His eyes kept moving. This started small. Just a few runs out past the county line. People who didn't go to hospitals. People who couldn't. Then it became something else. He paused. The words settled in. Something else. Ethan glanced at the map sitting beside him, at the marked routes, at the patterns. He kept reading. There are places out here where help doesn't reach, not because it can't, but because no one sends it. I went anyway. Milo's ears flicked at the tone of Ethan's breathing. He stayed quiet, still watching. Ethan turned the page. I kept records, locations, conditions, what worked, what didn't. If you're seeing this, then those places still need someone. Ethan's grip tightened on the paper. His jaw set slightly. He read the next line twice before it fully sank in. I know what happened to you over there. Ethan stopped, didn't blink. The truck, the dust, the radio cutting in and out. He forced the memory down, kept his eyes on the page. You don't talk about it. You never did. But I've seen that look before. It doesn't go away. There was a space between sentences, like his father had stopped writing for a moment, then continued. This isn't about fixing anything. Some things don't get fixed. But you can still move. Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. Not a release. Just air. He folded the letter once, then again, set it down on the dashboard. For a long moment, he didn't touch anything else. Didn't look at the notebooks. Didn't look at the map. He just sat there. Milo shifted slightly, pressing his shoulder against Ethan's leg. Grounding. Ethan reached down without thinking and rested his hand on the dog's neck. Warm. Solid. Real. Outside, the wind changed direction. Ethan's eyes lifted to the rearview mirror again. Same view, same empty space. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt used, lived in, like something had passed through it over and over again. Ethan picked up one of the notebooks, flipped it open. Different entries this time, more detailed, less clinical. July 8th, Old Mining Road. 2 veterans, both off-grid. One hasn't slept in days. Kept watch the whole time I was there. Ethan's eyes paused. He read the line again. Kept watch. He flipped forward. July 22nd. Same location. Brought supplies. One of them asked if I'd come back next week. Didn't say why. Another page. August 3rd. Found him alone this time. Other one gone. Didn't ask questions. He didn't offer answers. Ethan closed the notebook halfway. His gaze drifted to the map again, to a cluster of markings in the northern ridge. He knew that terrain. Narrow passes, limited visibility, bad radio. Places you didn't go unless you had a reason. Milo suddenly lifted his head, ears forward, body stiff. Ethan's hand tightened slightly on the notebook. Yeah, he murmured. He heard it too. This time the sound wasn't subtle. A truck, engine low, coming up the dirt road, slow, not passing through, coming here. Ethan closed the notebook, set it down. His eyes moved once across the field, calculating distance, cover, lines of sight. Then he reached for the ignition, The old ambulance didn't start yesterday, but right now, he needed it to. Milo moved into position without being told. Low, ready, watching the road. Ethan turned the key. The engine hesitated, coughed once, twice, then caught. The engine rattled like it might fall apart, but it held. Ethan didn't waste the moment. He shifted into gear and rolled the ambulance forward just enough to change the angle, just enough to give himself a better line of sight down the dirt road without exposing the full side of the vehicle. The truck coming in slowed. Old pickup, dark color, dust trailing behind it in a low cloud. Not local, or at least not someone who belonged here. Ethan didn't wave, didn't step out. He let the engine idle, hands resting lightly on the wheel, eyes steady. Milo stood between the seats, body forward, ears locked. The truck stopped about 30 yards out. Engine still running. 2 men inside. Driver kept his hands on the wheel. Passenger leaned slightly, trying to see through the windshield glare. They didn't get out. They just sat there, watching. Ethan counted the distance again. 30 yards. No cover between. Open ground. Bad position. He reached down slowly, picked up the folded map from the seat beside him, and placed it on the dashboard where it was visible. Then he leaned back, let them see him. The passenger door of the truck opened. One man stepped out, mid-40s, work jacket. Nothing remarkable, except the way he moved. Not sloppy, not casual. He closed the door without slamming it and walked a few steps forward, stopping short of the ambulance. "Morning," the man called. Ethan didn't answer right away. He let the silence sit. Then, "Depends." The man gave a small nod, like he expected that. "Vehicle's been sitting here a while," he said. "Thought it was abandoned. It wasn't." The man's eyes flicked to the ambulance, then back to Ethan. "You planning on moving it? Working on it?" Another pause. The wind shifted, pushing dust between them. The man glanced past Ethan toward the rear of the ambulance. Milo let out a low sound, barely audible. The man's eyes dropped to the dog, held there for a second too long, then lifted again. "Just checking," he said. "People leave things out here. Sometimes they don't come back." Ethan didn't respond, didn't nod, didn't smile. The man waited, then shrugged, like it didn't matter. "All right then." He turned, walked back to the truck, and climbed in. The engine revved slightly. They pulled out slow, dust trailing behind them again as they headed back down the road. Ethan watched until they were gone, completely gone. Then he killed the engine. Silence dropped hard around him. Milo didn't relax. Not yet. Ethan reached for the notebook again, opened it without looking at the page number. His eyes landed halfway down. April 17th. Northern Ridge. 1 male. Former infantry. Doesn't trust anyone. Took 20 minutes just to get him to sit down. Ethan's fingers tightened on the paper. He kept reading. Says he hears rotor wash at night. Knows it isn't there, but it doesn't matter. Ethan stopped. The sound hit him before the memory did. Low. Distant. A thump. 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 He froze. Eyes unfocused. The inside of the ambulance shifted. Metal walls turning to canvas. Dust in the air. Voices cutting in over a radio. Cole. Stay with him. Stay with. Ethan blinked hard. The sound didn't stop. It got louder, closer. His hand moved automatically, pressing down against his own thigh like he was trying to stop bleeding that wasn't there. Tourniquet. Where's the... Nothing. No blood. No sand. Just cold metal under his palm. Milo moved fast. He pressed into Ethan's side, solid weight, forcing his attention back into the present. The sound broke. Gone. Just wind again. Ethan inhaled sharply. Once. Twice. He didn't look at the dog, but his hand found Milo's neck, fingers pressing into the thick fur. Grounding. Real. He stayed like that for a while. Breathing. Letting the edges of the world settle back into place. Then he looked down at the notebook again. At the line. Doesn't trust anyone. Ethan let out a quiet breath. Yeah, he murmured. I get that. He flipped the page. Another entry. Shorter. April 24th. Same location. He stayed this time. Let me check his leg. Infection's worse than he said. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew that type. The ones who stayed just long enough to survive, then disappeared again. He turned another page. May 2nd. Didn't show. Went back to check. Camp's empty. Ethan closed the notebook slowly. Set it aside. His eyes drifted to the map again. To the northern ridge. Same markings. Same route. He leaned back in the seat, staring at it. Not thinking. Just seeing it. The lines. The distance. The terrain. His hand moved without him deciding. He reached for the keys. Milo lifted his head. Ethan didn't say anything. Didn't explain. He just turned the key. This time the engine started easier, like it had already decided it wasn't done yet. Ethan looked once more at the road where the truck had disappeared, then back at the map, then forward, toward the mountains. Let's see what he was doing out there, he said quietly. Milo shifted into position. Ready. The ambulance rolled forward, slow at first, then steady, and as the field gave way to the narrow dirt path leading north, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace. Not yet. But direction. It came back in pieces. Not like before. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just enough to point him forward. The dirt road narrowed as Ethan drove north, the ambulance rattling over rocks and shallow ruts. Pines closed in on both sides, tall and quiet, their shadows stretching across the path like long fingers. No traffic, no houses, just the kind of terrain that swallowed sound. Ethan kept his speed low, eyes moving. Left, right, rear view. He wasn't thinking about it. He was doing it. Milo sat upright in the passenger seat, one paw braced against the dash to steady himself. His head turned with each shift of the road, tracking movement before it happened. A branch snapped somewhere off to the right. Milo's ears snapped toward it instantly. Ethan didn't look. Not right away. He let the moment pass, then checked the mirror. Nothing following. Still, he adjusted his grip on the wheel. The map lay unfolded beside him, weighted down with the metal case from the compartment. He glanced at it every few minutes, matching landmarks to memory. Old habits. Don't trust the paper alone. Confirm the ground. The road forked ahead, one path wider, easier. The other, narrow, overgrown, barely visible. Ethan slowed, looked at the map, then at the terrain. The narrow one matched. Of course it did. He turned the wheel. Branches scraped along the sides of the ambulance, a long, dragging sound that echoed through the cabin. Milo didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly, focused. The path climbed, steeper, rocks loose under the tires. Ethan eased off the gas, letting the engine pull instead of forcing it. Halfway up, he stopped, engine idling. Milo went still, not alert, still, listening. Ethan cut the engine. Silence dropped instantly. No wind here, no movement in the trees. Just footsteps. Faint. Behind them. Not on the road. Off it, moving parallel. Ethan didn't turn his head, didn't speak. He reached down slowly, picked up the wrench from the floor, and rested it across his thigh. Milo shifted. Low. Ready. The footsteps stopped. Ethan counted again. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. Then, a different sound. Metal. Soft. A dull contact. From the rear. Ethan's jaw tightened. Someone was at the back doors. Milo moved before Ethan did. He twisted in the seat, a low growl building in his chest, not loud, but deep enough to carry. Ethan turned, slow. The rearview mirror showed nothing but the dark interior. But the handle, it moved, just slightly, tested. Ethan didn't wait. He kicked the door open and stepped out fast, rounding the side of the ambulance in 2 strides. Hey, no one there. The back doors were closed. Still, the handle hung loose, swaying slightly. Ethan stopped short, breathing steady, eyes scanning, tree line, ground. No movement, no figure running, nothing. Milo was at his side now, body angled outward, covering the open space. Ethan stepped closer to the rear doors, ran a hand along the handle. Warm. Not from the sun. From contact. Recent. He pulled the door open. Hard. It swung wide. The back of the ambulance looked exactly as he'd left it. Bench. Cabinets. Nothing disturbed. Except, Ethan stepped in. Slow. The floor. The seam. Barely visible. But now, he saw it. A faint smear across the metal. Dirt. Fresh. Someone had stood here. Right where he had. Milo let out another low sound. His nose moved along the floor, tracing the path. Then he stopped. Right over the compartment. Ethan followed his gaze. The latch. It wasn't fully seated. Not like before. Someone had tried to open it. Or had. Ethan's chest tightened slightly. Not panic. Not fear. Recognition. He crouched. Ran his fingers along the edge. The seal felt different. Looser. Disturbed. He didn't open it. Not yet. He looked up instead. Out through the open doors, the trees stood quiet, unmoving, watching. Ethan stood slowly, closed the doors behind him, locked them this time. Not for security, for control. He turned to Milo. The dog's eyes were fixed on the tree line again. Not confused. Certain. Ethan followed his gaze. Same direction as before. Same unseen presence. He nodded once, almost to himself. Yeah, he said quietly. Someone else knows. The wind didn't answer, but the silence that followed was no longer empty. It pressed in. Not loud. Not visible. But there. Ethan didn't start the engine right away. He stood beside the ambulance, one hand resting lightly on the metal, feeling the faint vibration of cooling steel under his palm. His eyes stayed on the tree line where Milo was looking. Nothing moved. No branches shifting. No birds taking off. Just stillness. The kind that meant something had already passed through. Ethan turned back to the driver's door. "Get in," he said quietly. Milo didn't hesitate. He moved first, jumping into the passenger seat, then turning immediately to face the rear again, like he didn't trust anything behind them. Ethan climbed in, shut the door, and locked it. Then he pulled the map closer. The markings in the northern ridge stood out more now. Not just locations. Routes, connections, supply lines. Ethan traced one with his finger. From the old mining road, up along a narrow cut through the hills, ending near a cluster of symbols he hadn't paid attention to before. Small circles. 3 of them. Close together. He looked out through the windshield, then back at the map. "All right," he muttered. He turned the key. The engine caught faster this time, like it recognized the path. The ambulance rolled forward again, deeper into the woods. The road tightened. Branches scraped along the sides harder now, the sound sharp and constant. Rocks shifted under the tires, forcing Ethan to keep both hands steady on the wheel. He didn't rush, didn't force it. He let the vehicle move with the terrain. Milo stayed locked forward, but his head moved in quick, precise motions. Left, right, rear, tracking things Ethan couldn't see yet. Half an hour passed. Maybe more. Time blurred when there were no markers. Just trees. Just road. Then, the forest opened slightly. Not much. Just enough to reveal something ahead. Ethan slowed. A structure. Low. Weathered. Half hidden behind a line of fallen timber. He killed the engine before getting too close. Silence dropped again. Milo stood, every muscle tight. Ethan didn't reach for the door immediately. He scanned. Roofline first. No movement. Windows. One boarded, one cracked. Ground. No obvious tracks. But the dirt near the entrance looked disturbed. Recent. He stepped out. Slow. Milo followed, staying just off his left side, slightly ahead. They moved together, toward the structure. The air felt different here. Still. Heavy. Ethan stopped a few yards short. Listened. Nothing. He moved closer. The door hung slightly open. Not wide, just enough to show darkness inside. Ethan angled his body, keeping the wall to his right, minimizing exposure. He reached out and pushed the door. It creaked, loud in the quiet. Inside, a single room, rough walls, concrete floor, and along one side, shelving, medical supplies, bandages, bottles, some sealed, some used. Ethan stepped in. Milo stayed at the doorway for half a second, then followed. The smell hit him first. Antiseptic. Faint. Old. But real as Ethan moved deeper. His eyes caught details automatically. Table, improvised, cleaned recently, not abandoned, not completely. He reached out, touched the surface. No dust. He looked around again. On the far wall, a board, nails driven in, paper pinned to it, lists, names, dates. Ethan stepped closer. Read one. Thomas. Follow up Tuesday. Another. Check wound. North Camp. His jaw tightened. This wasn't random. This was organized. A system. He turned slightly, scanning the rest of the room. Then he saw it. On the floor. Near the back corner. A small patch of darkened wood. Not old. Fresh. He crouched. Ran his fingers over it. Sticky. Dried. Blood. Milo let out a low growl. Ethan looked up. The dog wasn't focused on the blood. He was staring at the far wall. At a narrow opening Ethan hadn't noticed before. A second door. Half hidden. Ethan stood slowly. Every sense tightening. He moved toward it, step by step. Milo ahead now, silent. Ethan reached the door, paused, listened. Nothing. He pushed it open. The space beyond was smaller. Storage, maybe. Or a place to hide. Empty. Except for one thing. On the ground, a boot print. Fresh. Leading out. Not in. Ethan stared at it, then back toward the main room. Toward the door they had entered. Toward the path behind them. Milo turned suddenly, head snapping toward the trees outside. A sharp bark this time, not warning, alert. Ethan moved fast, back to the main doorway, out into the open, just in time to see movement. A figure slipping between the trees, gone before he could get a clear look, but not gone far. Ethan's posture shifted instantly. Weight forward, breathing controlled, eyes tracking. "Stay," he said low. Milo didn't move, but his eyes stayed locked on the direction the figure had gone. Ethan took one step forward, then stopped, looked back at the structure, at the supplies, at the blood, at the map still sitting in the ambulance behind him, then back at the trees. The choice hung there. Follow, or understand. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped back. Not chasing. Not yet. Not blind, he muttered. Milo relaxed, just slightly. Ethan took one last look at the tree line, then turned back toward the ambulance, because whoever was out there wasn't running. They were watching, and they were waiting for him to make the wrong move. Ethan didn't give it to them. He backed away from the tree line without turning his back, step by step, keeping his eyes on the space where the figure had disappeared. Milo mirrored him, body low, head angled, tracking something Ethan couldn't see anymore. The forest had gone quiet again. Too quiet. Ethan reached the ambulance, opened the driver's door, and paused before getting in. His eyes moved once more across the ridge, memorizing the angles, the shadows, the lines of escape. Then he climbed in. Door shut, lock. Engine stayed off. He sat there for a second, hands resting on the wheel, listening to his own breathing settle back into rhythm. Milo turned slightly, glancing at him, waiting. Ethan nodded once. "Yeah, we're not done here." He reached for the map again. Spread it flat. The cluster of markings, the 3 circles, lined up exactly with where they were now. The cabin behind them was just one point in something larger. He traced the next mark, farther east, deeper, not accessible by the same path. Ethan looked up. Through the windshield, past the trees. He made the decision without saying it out loud. The engine turned over, this time smoother. They moved again, not back the way they came. Forward, through. The path narrowed almost immediately, forcing Ethan to angle the ambulance between 2 fallen trunks. Branches scraped harder now, some snapping, some dragging along the metal like fingers. The terrain shifted, steeper, rockier. At one point, Ethan had to stop and get out, kicking loose stones away from the tires to keep traction. Milo stayed beside him, never straying more than a few feet, scanning the ridge above them. Always above. Ethan noticed that. "Yeah," he murmured. "I see it. High ground. That's where you watch from. That's where you control movement." The thought didn't feel like a theory. It felt like memory. They climbed another 100 yards. Then the trees broke open. Not wide, just enough. And there it was. The building, larger than the first one. Not a cabin, not a house. Something in between. Wood frame, reinforced in places with metal panels that didn't match the original structure. Windows boarded from the inside. A single door facing the open ground. Ethan killed the engine before they reached it. Silence again. Milo stood. Still. Focused. Ethan stepped out slowly. The air here felt different. Cleaner, but heavier. Like it had been used. A lot. He moved toward the building, boots crunching over gravel and broken wood. The door wasn't open this time. It was shut. But not locked. Ethan rested his hand on it. Waited. Listened. Nothing. He pushed. The door opened inward with a low creak. Inside. Light filtered through cracks in the boarded windows, cutting thin lines across the floor. The space was bigger than he expected. Divided. One side, storage, boxes, supplies, organized. The other, medical. Not improvised this time. Structured. A table. Proper height. Cabinets. Instruments laid out with care. Ethan stepped in slowly. Milo followed, but stayed near the doorway, watching behind them. Ethan moved deeper into the room. His eyes took in details automatically. Order. Clean lines. Not abandoned. Maintained. He ran a hand across the table. No dust. Recent. He opened one of the cabinets. Inside, bandages, medications. Some expired, some not. Used. He closed it again. Turned. On the far wall, another board, larger than the one in the first cabin. More names. More notes. More lines connecting them. Ethan stepped closer. Read one. Jackson. Ridge Camp. Needs follow-up. Another. L. Harris, infection stable. Return Thursday. His jaw tightened slightly. This wasn't just a stop. This was a system, a network. He turned slightly, scanning the rest of the room. Then he saw it. In the corner, a chair. Metal frame. Positioned at an angle facing the door. Not random. Placed. A watch position. Ethan walked over to it. Touched the backrest. Cold. But not unused. Milo suddenly let out a sharp bark. Ethan turned. Fast. The dog had moved away from the door, toward the back wall. Toward a section Ethan hadn't checked yet. A narrow hallway. Ethan moved to him. Slow. Controlled. He stepped into the hallway. 2 small rooms on either side. First, empty. Second, not empty. A bed. Simple. Used. Blanket folded tight at the edge. And on the floor, a fresh mark. Dragged. Something heavy. Recently. Ethan crouched. Touched it. Still slightly damp. Milo growled. Low. Ethan looked up. The back wall. Another door. Smaller. Half open. He pushed it wider. Outside. A path. Narrow. Leading down the slope behind the building. Ethan stepped to the threshold. Looked out. The path curved quickly, disappearing behind thick brush. Whoever had been here had left that way. Not long ago. Ethan stood there watching the empty trail, then slowly straightened. He didn't follow. Not yet. He stepped back inside, closed the door, and for the first time since entering the building, he noticed something he hadn't before. On the main table, near the edge, a single item, out of place, a notebook. Not one of his father's. Different cover, different wear. Ethan walked over, picked it up, opened it. The handwriting inside was not his father's. Ethan didn't flip the page right away. He stood still in the middle of the room, the unfamiliar notebook in his hand, the quiet pressing in from all sides. Milo shifted. A low, warning sound rolled from his chest. Not at the door, not at the hallway. Behind them. Ethan's head lifted slightly. He didn't turn fast. He didn't need to. The air had already changed. He set the notebook down on the table without looking at it again. His hand dropped to his side. Loose. Ready. A shadow crossed the doorway. Then movement. Fast. Ethan pivoted just as a figure rushed the entrance. No hesitation. No words. The man came straight in, low and direct, aiming for the side, cutting the angle like he knew exactly where Ethan would be. Ethan stepped off line. Instinct. He didn't try to block, didn't try to meet force with force. He shifted. Let the momentum carry past him. The man's shoulder clipped the edge of the table, throwing him slightly off balance. Milo was already moving, a blur of muscle and fur. He hit the man from the side, jaws locking onto the arm before the man could recover. A sharp grunt. The man twisted hard, trying to shake him loose. Off! Ethan snapped. Milo didn't release. He adjusted, tightened. The man's free hand came up. Something flashed. Steel. Ethan saw it in the same instant Milo shifted again. Too late. The blade caught the dog along the shoulder. A quick slice. Not deep, but enough. Milo yelped once, a sharp sound that cut through everything. Ethan moved, fast. He stepped in, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard. Angle and pressure, not strength. The knife dropped, hit the floor. Ethan shoved him back. The man stumbled, hit the wall, recovered faster than he should have. Not a civilian. No panic, no hesitation. He looked at Ethan once, quick, assessing. Then he turned and ran. Out the door. Gone. Ethan didn't chase. He took one step toward the exit, then stopped. Milo. The dog had backed off, weight shifted, one paw barely touching the ground. Blood. Not a lot. But enough. Ethan dropped to one knee beside him. Hey. Hey. Milo's breathing was steady. Eyes clear. Focused. Still tracking the doorway. Stay with me. Ethan's hands moved without thought. Checking. Locating. The cut ran along the shoulder, shallow but open. Clean blade. Lucky. Could have been worse. Should have been worse. Ethan glanced toward the door once. Empty. The forest beyond it still. He turned back immediately. No more distractions. He moved to the cabinets, pulled them open fast. Bandages. Antiseptic. Old, but usable. He grabbed what he needed and came back down beside Milo. Easy. Milo didn't pull away. Didn't flinch when Ethan cleaned the wound. Just stayed still. Eyes still on the door. Guarding. Even now. Ethan pressed the gauze in place. Wrapped it tight, but not too tight. Fingers working with a precision he hadn't used in years. The motions came back. Not smooth. Not automatic. But there. Pressure. Hold. He adjusted the wrap. Checked for bleeding. Controlled. He sat back slightly. Exhaled once. Milo shifted his weight again. Tested the leg. Held. Ethan rested his hand on the dog's neck. Good, he said quietly. Not praise. Acknowledgement. He stood slowly. Picked up the knife from the floor. Turned it in his hand. plain, no markings, but balanced, used. He set it on the table next to the notebook that wasn't his father's. Then he looked around the room again. Really looked this time. The chair, the supplies, the fresh marks, the second path out the back. And now, the attack. Not random, not a warning, a test. Ethan stepped to the doorway, looked out. Nothing. But he knew better now. They weren't watching from a distance anymore. They were inside the same ground, same space, close. He turned back. His eyes landed on the notebook again, the one that didn't belong. He picked it up, opened it. The handwriting inside was sharper, more recent. Short entries, no names. Just notes. Compartment confirmed. Ethan's grip tightened slightly. He read the next line. Subject has it now. A pause. Then, dog is a problem. Ethan closed the notebook slowly. The room felt smaller, tighter. He looked down at Milo, at the bandage, at the blood soaking faintly through the edge, then back at the door. They're not just watching, he said quietly. Milo didn't respond. He didn't need to. Ethan already knew. They were tracking, and now they were closing in. Ethan didn't panic. He moved. Fast, but controlled. He swept the room once more, eyes catching everything in a single pass. The back exit, the hallway, the supply shelves, the blood on the floor. Then he grabbed the notebook that wasn't his father's and slid it into his jacket. Milo pushed himself up. His front leg trembled slightly, but he stayed on it. Still ready, still watching. Easy, Ethan murmured, but there was no softness in it, just timing. He stepped outside, scanning the tree line again. Nothing visible, but that didn't mean clear. It meant hidden. He turned back to the ambulance. Move. Milo followed, favoring the injured shoulder but keeping pace. Ethan opened the rear doors, then stopped halfway. His eyes dropped to the floor. The compartment, still sealed. He hesitated. Not long. Then he moved inside and dropped to one knee. Hands steady. He opened it again. The hidden space revealed itself just as before. Tight, ordered, untouched, except for what he had already taken. Ethan reached in and pulled out the rest of the contents. All of it. The journals, the map, the medical kit. Nothing left behind. If someone came back, they'd find empty steel. Nothing to take. Nothing to confirm. He shut the panel, locked it, then stood and moved forward, tossing the supplies into the front cabin. Milo climbed in after him. Ethan slammed the rear doors shut and locked them. Then he stepped back for one last look at the building. The quiet clinic in the woods. The place his father had built piece by piece. Left behind. Now exposed. Ethan didn't say anything. He got in, turned the key. The engine started. He didn't wait. He drove. Fast this time. The ambulance bounced hard over the uneven path, branches snapping against the sides as he pushed through the narrow trail. Milo braced himself, one paw against the seat, eyes fixed on the rear window. Watching. Always watching. They didn't follow immediately. But Ethan didn't slow. Not until the terrain opened again. Not until he had distance. Only then did he pull off the path and stop behind a ridgeline that blocked visibility from the road. Engine off. Silence again. But different now. Temporary. Ethan reached over and pulled the medical kit into his lap, opened it. Inside, basic supplies. Old, but usable. He turned to Milo. Let me see. Milo shifted, allowing Ethan access to the wound. The bandage had soaked through at the edges. but the bleeding had slowed. Good. Ethan cleaned it again, more carefully this time. Every movement precise, deliberate. Like muscle memory was waking up piece by piece. He checked depth, angle. No tearing, no foreign debris. Lucky, he muttered. Milo's ears flicked at his voice. Ethan worked in silence, wrapped the wound tighter, secured it, then leaned back slightly, watching the dog. Milo tested his leg again, held. Then he turned his head slightly, not toward Ethan, toward the journals. Ethan followed his gaze. The top one had fallen open during the drive, a page exposed. Ethan reached for it, looked down. A symbol, drawn in the margin. Simple. 3 lines intersecting in a rough triangle. His eyes narrowed. He had seen that before. Not in the journals, not on the map. He looked at Milo, really looked this time. At the collar, old, worn, leather cracked from years of use. But there, faded, almost gone, the same symbol. Ethan's hand stilled. He reached out slowly, turning the collar just enough to see it clearly. It matched. Exactly. Milo watched him, calm, unflinching, like he had been waiting for this. Ethan leaned back, processing. His eyes moved from the collar to the journals, to the ambulance behind them. Everything connected. Not by accident. Not by chance. He picked up the first journal again, flipped back, searching. Then he found it. A page near the middle, a short entry. No date. Just a note. Started training the shepherd today. Smart. Picks up scent fast. We'll need him to find what others won't. Ethan stared at the line, then at Milo, then back at the page. He trained you, he said quietly. Not a question. Milo didn't react, didn't need to. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Everything shifted. This wasn't random anymore. Not the compartment, not the map, not even Milo. The dog hadn't just found the hidden space. He had been meant to. Ethan exhaled slowly, a long breath, then nodded once. All right. His voice was steady now, clear, focused. He looked out toward the ridge, toward the forest, toward the unseen people moving through it. You picked the wrong place, he said under his breath. Milo shifted beside him, closer, ready. Ethan reached for the keys again. The engine turned over, caught. This time, there was no hesitation in his movements, no uncertainty. Whatever his father had started wasn't over, and whatever was hunting it was about to find out they weren't alone anymore. The engine noise faded into the trees behind them as Ethan pushed deeper along the ridge, then cut off onto a narrow clearing just below the second structure. Not exposed, not hidden, balanced. He parked the ambulance at an angle, nose pointed toward the only exit path, rear facing the tree line. Quick escape, minimal turning radius. Old habits. He killed the engine. Silence settled again. But this time, it didn't feel like something closing in. It felt like a perimeter. Defined. Milo shifted beside him, lowering himself carefully to the seat. His breathing had steadied, but the tension in his body hadn't left. Ethan glanced at the bandage, still holding. Stay, he said quietly. Milo didn't argue. Ethan grabbed the medical kit, the journals, and the map, then stepped out. The second building stood ahead of him, waiting. He moved toward it again, slower this time, not searching, preparing. Inside, the space felt different now, not abandoned, not exposed, usable. Ethan set the kit down on the main table, opened it, checked supplies. Enough to work with, not enough to waste. He moved through the room, adjusting small things without thinking, clearing the table, shifting the chair angle, repositioning the light source near the window. Creating flow, creating space. His hands moved like they remembered something his mind hadn't fully caught up to yet. Then, footsteps. Not fast, not aggressive, uneven, dragging slightly. Ethan froze, turned. Milo lifted his head instantly, ears forward, but didn't bark. Ethan moved toward the door. 1 step, 2. He didn't reach for anything, didn't hide. He stood just inside the doorway and waited. A figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. A woman, mid-30s maybe. Clothes worn thin, layered against the cold. She carried something in her arms. No, someone. A child. Small. Limp. She stopped when she saw him, eyes wide, breathing hard. I heard, she started, voice breaking slightly. Someone said there was. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Ethan stepped forward. Bring him. No hesitation in his voice. No question. She moved, fast now, closing the distance. Ethan reached out, taking the child carefully, adjusting his grip without thinking, supporting the head, checking airway, weight, temperature. Hot. Too hot. Since when? He asked, already moving back inside. Yesterday. Maybe longer. He won't wake up. Ethan didn't answer. He laid the boy down on the table, hands moving, checking, breathing, fast, shallow, pulse, elevated, skin flushed, dehydrated. Ethan grabbed the thermometer. Quick check, high. He didn't say the number, didn't need to. He moved to the cabinet, pulling what he needed. Fluids, cooling cloth, basic meds, everything precise, everything measured. The woman stood frozen near the doorway, hands shaking, watching him like she didn't know if this was real. Milo shifted behind her, positioned himself just inside the entrance, watching the outside, guarding, even injured. Ethan worked, focused, no wasted movement, no hesitation. The boy stirred slightly under his hands. Weak. But there. Stay with me, Ethan murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The words felt familiar, too familiar. For a second, dust. Heat. A voice in his ear, Cole. Don't lose him, stay with. Ethan blinked. Hard. The room snapped back. Wood walls, cold air. The boy's breathing under his hand. Not that place. Not that time. Now. He adjusted the cloth, checked the airway again. Cleared. Good. Give him small sips, Ethan said, glancing up at the woman. Not too fast. She nodded quickly, moving closer, hands still shaking, but moving. Ethan stepped back slightly, watched, waited. The boy's breathing steadied, not fixed, but better, the kind of better that buys time. Ethan exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders didn't leave, but it shifted. Different weight now, not avoidance, responsibility. He turned his head slightly, looked toward the door. Milo still there, still watching, still holding the line. Ethan nodded once, to the dog, to himself. to something he hadn't said out loud yet. Then he turned back to the table, back to the work. Because out there, someone was watching. But in here, someone needed him. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't hesitate. Not when the boy's breathing hitched. Not when the woman's hands started shaking again. Not when the quiet outside shifted. Just enough to remind him they weren't safe. He stayed on the work, focused, present. "Keep talking to him," Ethan said, adjusting the cloth on the boy's forehead. "Doesn't matter what you say. Just keep him with you." The woman nodded quickly, her voice soft but steady now, repeating the boy's name over and over like an anchor. Milo shifted at the door. A low sound. Ethan glanced once. The dog hadn't moved from his position, but his ears were angled differently now, tracking something farther out. Not close, but not gone. Ethan turned back to the table. The boy's breathing steadied again, temperature dropping slowly. Not safe yet, but better. Ethan stepped back half a pace, watching, waiting, timing. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time stretched differently here. The boy stirred, eyes fluttering, weak, but conscious. The woman gasped softly, one hand covering her mouth as she leaned closer. Hey, it's okay." Ethan didn't say anything. He just watched, confirmed, then nodded once. "He's holding." The woman looked up at him, something shifting in her expression, fear giving way to something else. Relief. Not full, but enough. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan didn't respond, not because he didn't hear her, because he didn't know how to answer that yet. Milo barked once, sharp. Ethan turned immediately, moved to the door, looked out. The ridge beyond the clearing was empty, but the trees, they weren't still anymore. Subtle movement, distant, watching. Ethan stepped outside, just enough to see the ambulance, still where he left it. No one near it. But something had changed. The ground, near the rear tires, disturbed, fresh. Ethan crouched slightly, eyes scanning the dirt. Tracks, light, deliberate. Someone had come close enough to check, then pulled back, testing again. Ethan stood slowly, looked out toward the tree line. He didn't chase, didn't call out. He just stood there for a second, then turned back inside. The woman was sitting now, the boy in her arms, wrapped in one of the blankets from the shelf, his breathing steady. Weak, but stable. Ethan walked past them without a word and moved to the far wall. He grabbed one of the old boards his father had used, turned it over, blank side facing out. Then he picked up a marker from the table, hesitated for a second, then wrote, simple, clear, open. He nailed it beside the door, not hidden, not subtle, meant to be seen. The woman watched him, confused at first, then understanding. "You're staying?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked at the room, at the table, at the supplies, at the space his father had built piece by piece, then at Milo, still at the door, still watching, still holding the line. "Yeah," Ethan said. Simple, certain. He stepped outside again, walked to the ambulance, ran his hand along the side. The faded paint, the rust, the thing his brother had called scrap. He opened the driver's door, sat down. For a second he didn't move, just listened. Wind, trees, distance. Then a faint sound, not close but clear, a voice, calling, somewhere out beyond the ridge. Ethan's head tilted slightly. He didn't need to hear the words, just the tone, urgent. He looked over at Milo, The dog met his gaze. No hesitation. Ethan nodded once, then turned the key. The engine started. Steady. Reliable now. He shifted into gear. The ambulance rolled forward, turning slowly toward the narrow path leading back into the trees. Behind him, the building stood quiet, the sign on the wall catching a sliver of light through the open door. Ahead, the forest. Unknown. Waiting. Ethan didn't look back again, because the call never stopped. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not the danger, not the secrets, not even the fight. Just the fact that somewhere out there, someone is still waiting for help. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something simple. Type 1 in the comments if you think Ethan made the right choice, or type 0 if you think he should have walked away. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, even a little, hit subscribe, because there are more stories like this coming. Stories about people who were broken and chose to stand anyway. I'll see you in the next one.